Okay, now to add an object to our Firebase database, I'm going to add a button and handle its click event. I'm going to call the add method. Save. Now back in the component, I'm going to add this method here. Now to add an object to Firebase, we use this observable that we get from the list method. Let's look at the return type of this list method. So you can see here we get a Firebase list observable. This observable wraps the standard observable that comes with RxJS and adds additional methods. In this lecture, we're going to work with one of these methods for adding a new object to Firebase. Now here in the add method, if I type this.cousins. Look, we don't have IntelliSense because the type of this field is any. Now I'm going to explicitly set the type of this field. So one more time, look at the list method. We get a Firebase list observable. And this class is generic. So you can see inside angle brackets, we have a generic parameter, which is in this case, any array. And that means our observable collection contains an array of objects. So every time this cousins node is modified, we get an array of objects. So back here in our component, on the top, I'm going to import Firebase list observable from Angular Fire 2 and use that to explicitly set the type of this field. So Firebase list observable of any array. Okay. Now back in the add method, when we type dot, we can see these additional methods that are available in Firebase list observable. In this lecture, we're going to use the push method. Now here I can pass an object. So let's add a new cousin, and I want this object to have a name property and set it to, let's say, Asian. Save. Back to the browser. So I'm going to click this add method. Look, nothing is happening. Let's look at the console. Once again, we have a permission denied error because by default, only authenticated users can read and write to Firebase. So we go back to our Firebase console. On the database page, Rules tab, change the write rule. I'm going to set this to true. Publish. Now back in our Pepper app, I'm going to refresh this page, click the add button. Okay, we have a new object here, but it doesn't have a label. Let's see what's happening in our database. So back in the console. So now here we have a new object with this key, and the value of this is an object itself. This object has a property called name, which is set to Asian. So this push method we used created a new key which is unique for this new object. And these keys are ordered by date time. So as we add objects to this cousins node, they're automatically sorted chronologically. Now, the reason our new item here does not have a label is because in our template, we are rendering $value property. And this $value is used only when working with primitive types. So in a simple node, a simple key value pair, where the value is a primitive type like a string, a boolean, or a number, we have this $value property. But our new node is a complex object. So $value is empty. Now if I change this to c.name, see what happens. Save. Back to the browser. The first two nodes are empty, but the third one is Asian, so it's rendered properly. Now this brings up an interesting situation. Let's take a look at our console again. You see we do not have a consistent structure here. And this is one of the major differences between NoSQL and relational databases. In relational databases, we have a schema. Every record in a table follows the same schema. We have the same columns. But in NoSQL databases, we do not have that structure. And this gives us more freedom. Now, if you're new to NoSQL databases, you think this is a little bit weird. But trust me, this is actually very powerful. And as you work more with NoSQL databases, you're going to see this in action. So to recap, to add a new object to Firebase, we use the push method. And this method will generate a new unique key for that object. The argument we pass to this method is the value for this new object. Now we can make this a little bit more complex. So for example, I can add another property here, like details, which is a complex object. And here we have another property called description, whatever. Save, back to the browser. Let's add a new object. Now let's take a look at the console. Here's our new object, again, a new unique key sorted by date time. And you can see we have a name property, but we also have details, which is a complex object that has a description property. So NoSQL databases are JSON object stores. We can add a JSON object in a NoSQL database, and it gets stored exactly the way it is. In relational databases, we don't have something like that. To store a hierarchy of objects, we need to create parent records first and then associate them with their children. And sometimes this can get a little bit complex and tedious. Next, we're going to look at how to update an object in Firebase.